Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished entrepreneur from Singapore, Lindsay Davis. Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Lindsay is the co-founder of FemTech Association of Asia. She's an advocate for gender equality and equity, and she's been recognized, felicitated, and awarded several times. So let's start talking about the FemTech Association of Asia. Tell me about this venture and your motivation to start it.
Absolutely. And I think an even better place to start is maybe what is FemTech? Mm-hmm. So coming into this industry that feels new, but obviously women have been here as long as time. Mm-hmm. So FemTech is the combination of female and technology. So women's health and technology, the intersection of. Mm-hmm. So I work with businesses in this space. Yeah. So in October of 2021, the FemTech Association of Asia was launched, and we are the first, which we are very proud of, but we're the only, which we'd love to see more of, industry association for FemTech in Asia. Mm-hmm. We work with entrepreneurs, founders, professionals, the media, investors, and most excitingly, enthusiasts. Okay. So those who are really just passionate about women's health. So we have about 30 companies in our association, actually over that now, and we operate across 8 different countries across Southeast Asia, and a few other countries as well, South Korea and Japan, to name a couple more. We also work across 10 different categories, from fertility to menopause, from period wellness or menstrual wellness, through to diagnostics. So we really have a wide range of businesses that we work with. Fabulous. And ultimately, our vision is to have affordable, accessible, and available healthcare for all women, especially in Asia, but moreover around the world as our ultimate vision.
Amazing. And you're also in this amazing work meeting one of the goals of the SDG. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
So, Lindsay, tell me, can you describe for me the members of the FAA?
Absolutely. So our members are varied, which, as I mentioned before. So we have our founders, which is really our core group, and that's who we work with for our thought leadership, really who we focus our programming on, our amplification and PR of the industry, and our community building. However, it's important that we obviously have that inclusion of the broader community. And what do I mean by broader community? I mean multinationals. So for instance, we've worked with MyRepublic, which is a leading telecoms provider here in Southeast Asia and Australia, to incorporate, our work into their day-to-day and their wellness programs for their employees. So, we do see some great links with the community. And then, so along with our founders and our industry members, we obviously work with enthusiasts, as I mentioned as well. And those enthusiasts come to us from a range of backgrounds. So it could be, investors from venture capital, people who are interested in starting their angel investing journey, other, founders from other tech industries, or even people from, other, credit card companies or larger firms. So again, it's really just an all-inclusive place where people can come promote women's health, be involved in a platform that they feel like they understand and can contribute to, and help be a part of the tech environment, which is really exciting here in Singapore.
Amazing, amazing. Your mission is to inspire and drive collaboration to accelerate the creation of more healthcare solutions for more women. Help me understand this and give me an example.
Yeah, so ultimately, we believe that much like anything, having multiple voices and a team is going to be stronger than just one individual yelling. So with that in mind, we like to make sure that we are always involved in kind of our 4 key pillars of collaboration. So the first pillar is thought leadership. So we actually launched our first consumer survey. We're focusing on Singapore to start, so one country at a time. But we're starting with our consumer survey in Singapore to just hear what women think, how they manage their healthcare, what they spend on healthcare, where they spend money on healthcare, and how.
Right.
We have our programming and events. So we do discussions about category-based things. For instance, we did a talk about, we can do a talk about menopause or fertility or aging. We can also do other talks around investing. So our programming is quite broad. Okay. And we do a lot of partnerships in programming as well. Next, we have our amplification. So we do work with an incredibly generous and kind and enthusiastic PR set or media support here. Everyone from, Channel News Asia, Rice Media, the Business Times, everyone's been really supportive of our mission and has therefore offered us coverage of what we've been doing, our thought leadership. So that amplification of our businesses is strong. And then, of course, the community. So fundamentally, again, we're here for our founders, we're here for the industry. So we want to make sure that what we're providing is great for them.
Amazing, amazing. And, since you're talking of women's health, what are some of the healthcare solutions for women that have been developed through your association?
Absolutely. So I'd say more than through my association, I would credit our phenomenal members who are just real leaders in the tech space in women's healthcare. I'll give you a few examples. So maybe starting in Indonesia, we can take a little trip around Southeast Asia. There's a group called, or a company called IRA Concept. They do organic and sustainable menstrual products. Now, that in and of itself, spectacular. And Indonesia is a super exciting market. Also adding on to that, though, is that level of purpose. So it's a really beautiful combination of obviously a commercial model, but they did their first ever and very progressive NFT collection. Now they're selling those NFTs and actually taking all of the proceeds to fight poverty, period poverty along the Thai border. So there's a real commitment not only to commercial success, but actually social impact, which is a really great part of FemTech. In Japan, we have the the first FemTech marketplace called Fermata, which is very exciting. So you can see all different products from all different brands in one central space, and also get some education and content, which is really important. In Singapore, we have a ton going on. We have 2+ Fertility, who's just raised, I believe it's over $5 million now through Hana Life Technologies, the parent company.
Wow.
And they're working on fertility solutions, which especially with Singapore's exciting announcement of social egg freezing being allowed, we're really excited to hear there's just one more solution for fertility out there. We have SpeedDoc, which is looking at digital health. And here in Asia, especially relevant when we look at access to healthcare, the infrastructure, which may or may not support that reach, and also the general practitioners and specialist reach, which Ewan Davis spoke about from Quadria Capital. And I really loved his views on that, because FemTech really can be a solution for women who might not have that easy access. And then we have Ease Healthcare, building a whole ecosystem. It goes on and on. So really just a ton of exciting.
Fantastic. But tell me, you work in multiple countries. Do you see the healthcare challenges for women are similar or different in various countries?
That's a really great question. And I would say ultimately what everyone in the world has in common is under-researched, underserved, and underfunded. So when we look at under-researched, we're looking at only about 4% of R&D dollars going to women's healthcare issues.
Okay.
When we look at underserved, again, we're looking at not having these access, not being involved in clinical trials for many years. So maybe it's just a matter of not knowing that difference right now, or having that exposure, that difference between men and women and how they react. And there's a wonderful book I recommend called Invisible Women, that if people want to learn more about just that gender bias, it's really an interesting book. And then finally, when we talk about underfunded, I'm sure you've seen some of the articles, even in the past week alone, sharing that only 2 to 3% of VC funding goes to female founders. Well, FemTech globally is 80% female founders. Here in here in Southeast Asia, we're about 90% female founders. So obviously that's a concern.
Fantastic. So now let me move on and talk to you about women's health in Asia. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in Asia in 2022? And how are some of these trends evolving over the last few years?
Really good question. I think for Asia in particular, and perhaps a differentiator just with where we are in the maturity of the market, which is very fast growing and very exciting, but also early compared to our friends in the US or even the UK and Europe, where we're seeing just a bit bigger tickets with funding, a bit of a broader market category base, and also just the number of FemTech businesses. So Southeast Asia or Asia represents only about 14% of FemTech businesses worldwide. So when we look at the US, we really do see that inspiration, whether it's a unicorn like Maven Clinic, looking at holistic health, or TIA, similarly, looking at a woman's health journey, or even Elvi out of the UK, really inspiring. So I think when we see trends in the US, they are a little bit different than here. And over here in Asia, I think the first thing that in speaking with the members of the FemTech Association, there's a real commitment to education and community building that I think is, because we're in early stage, mostly pre-seed and seed businesses, which is another difference there. But I think that is the first trend, just that real commitment to accelerating and expanding education and content for women in the region. And when I say women, I do mean inclusive of those with women's healthcare needs who may not identify as women, of course. The second point would be around, I think there's a stronger vision for holistic healthcare. And so by that, I mean, I think people aren't just looking, or I shouldn't say people, companies and founders aren't just saying, okay, I'm just going to do one part. I'm not just going to come in as Ease Healthcare, which is a phenomenal company here based out of Singapore. And they're not just looking at, STI care from home and testing from home. They've moved into blood work testing. They're looking at preventative supplements for infections, UTI infections. They're really broadening their base of products. So I think what they see is the opportunity for this incredible ecosystem to be owned by a company, and trying to really expand the verticals, expand horizontally. Right. So that's really exciting here as a trend. I think, increased fundraising, I would say as well. And then expansion in the region as well. People moving into companies, people as well, but companies moving into other regions.
Well said. And when you look at different generations, the millennials, the Gen Zs, do you see a difference in their healthcare needs as compared to the Gen X and the boomers?
So I'm not sure if it's the needs, and I'll answer this anecdotally because I always find it a really interesting question, because I am so inspired and excited by millennials and Gen Z, because I think the discussion and the ownership of health is so much more transparent. So I think people really do feel comfortable saying, I need the day off work, I'm suffering from menstrual cramps. Or, if someone is suffering from fertility issues, it doesn't have to be swept under the rug. And I think the whole concept of, I don't just have to live with this. This isn't just, I have to deal with it. Sure. There are options, and while there's not a solution for everything, there are steps we can take. And I think I'm grateful for younger generations really leading through their consumer demands and owning their voice. And an example would be 29%, where we are in our survey right now. We're still collecting responses, but as of right now, 25% of women in Singapore say that they'd like to take better care of their health, but they don't know how. So they're clearly looking for those solutions.
And if a country as developed as Singapore has this response, I can imagine what it would be like in other parts of Asia.
Exactly. And that's where the education comes in. It's if you don't know that this is even a problem, maybe you don't even know that it's a problem, or maybe you don't know that it's something some other people suffer from, or, if there's a stigma associated. So I think this is what's really neat about the FemTech Association, is bringing together these companies that can have a wider and stronger voice to reach more women and say, we have options as women.
No, and what is amazing, Lindsay, is that the younger generation and people like your FAA, what they're doing is they're bringing a voice to a lot of the women's health issues, which earlier were never spoken about.
That's so true. It's absolutely true.
Wonderful.
And I think we're seeing it even with, I noticed it the other day. I saw a young lady carrying a canvas bag, and on the side of it, it had the name of a FemTech brand. Wow. And I thought, oh, that's really exciting, because a few years ago, maybe someone would have said, well, I don't want people to see that I'm so open about my menstrual care. Right. Do you know what I mean? And I thought that's exactly what we need, is for people to talk about these things openly and normalize the conversation. Absolutely. And moreover, from the association perspective, I see it as a huge business opportunity. Correct. So I love for investors to see that there's a whole 50% of the world that's just waiting to have solutions for them that we can invest in.
Absolutely. Because something which is an absolutely normal body function seems to have, over the last few hundred years, become some kind of a taboo. And I'm so glad this is changing.
Thank you. I love that perspective. Clearly an ally on the phone with me right
Absolutely.
now.
But moving on, Lindsay, how does diversity and inclusion play a role in FemTech?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think we're really fortunate in that whilst we are women all around the world, or again, those with healthcare needs, as I say, women's healthcare needs, I think what's really great is that we are also a very diverse community. Mm. Our healthcare needs are different. Mm. Our challenges are different. Our experiences are different.
Correct.
And our healthcare is different. So whether it's insurance, or national care, there's so many different, elements. Mm. So when I look at diversity and inclusion, I think, first of all, I like to think of diversity around maybe age. Right. So it's saying that we don't just focus on childbearing age, but we look to menopause, hormonal health, and an older generation, and say there's, again, a whole group and a whole group of women that aren't really spoken with, and that is that generation. I think when I look at diversity and inclusion, I think it's important to note, as I've mentioned a couple of times on this call, but we believe strongly in it, that it's not just about women who get their period. We say menstruators, because the idea, and I learned that from my friend Shivangi Bagri, who launched True Cup. And she explained it very well and just said simply, women are not the only ones who menstruate. And I thought, that's absolutely right. And there we go. It's even inclusive language. And we really want FemTech to be for everyone. Even as I mentioned earlier, you're an ally. We need men to be involved. In the FemTech Association, 43% of our businesses also sell to men. So it's not just women, they also sell to men, whether it's a man buying menstrual care products for his wife, or sexual testing, sexual health testing for a girlfriend. There is a community that we need to build around FemTech.
Well said, well said. And given the fact that you moved from the UK, what has surprised you the most about FemTech in Asia?
That is a great question. And and now having lived in several countries, which I feel very fortunate to have done, as it sounds like you have as well. So we definitely have that in common. Yeah. I would say the biggest thing that surprised me was less about the geography and more about the industry. And by that, I would say I've worked in a few different industries. I've worked in, the advertising industry. I've worked in the luxury industry for many years. And always have had an amazing time with amazing people. What's really exciting about the FemTech space is because it is so, and I use new with quotes because obviously it's not new. Women's healthcare needs have been around. Absolutely. But the acknowledgement of it and the participation in it, it's a phenomenally collaborative group of people. And I say that in that just about anyone I've reached out to in the whole world to talk about FemTech or what they're working on or what they're doing or their next project, 100% of the time I've had response, 100% of the time people have given me their time. So I just really want to credit and compliment the FemTech industry with being probably the most collaborative industry I've ever worked in. It's an amazing group of people globally.
Wow. So I have time for two more questions, Lindsay. My next question to you is on culture. Okay. I have always seen, and I'm 65 years old around the world, that culture has always somehow or the other had an impact on the way women are able to communicate, live, explain their challenges in different countries and in different communities. What is your experience, given the fact that you're working in so many different countries, on how culture is impacting FemTech?
That is a really great question. I would say, first of all, I'm going to go back to the US as the example. I think culturally we do see, and I just think it's the stage of the market, maybe even less culture, because again, going back to our millennials and our Gen Zs, super exciting with, digital life. It's online. So no one is truly just the citizen of their own country. They're the citizen of the world. So I think I will look to the US and say, we are seeing, kind of broader partnerships there with more products being put into, your Sephora's or your retail stores. We see more funding activity in other regions. So I would say when it comes to looking at different markets, it's mainly just the stage of the market, but certainly not the potential, because I truly believe that there's a ton of potential in this market.
Mm-hmm.
The highest number of internet users, on any continent. We have, just a really, phenomenal investment momentum here. By that, I mean, McKinsey recently, or last year, I should say, in 2021, they shared that 44% of digital health investment from private equity and venture capital is being done into Asia. Granted, FemTech is only seeing about 3% of that digital health funding, but the momentum is in Asia, and that really excites me about being here.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your amazing journey and your work in founding FemTech Association of India, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your learnings and from our conversation?
All right. So first lesson, or first takeaway, I would say is I'm a very action-oriented person. I believe obviously in thoughtful action and not just pushing forward, but I do believe in the idea of taking small steps and maybe having to pivot and maybe having to change the direction of those steps.
Yeah.
But I think taking a few small steps is at least moving versus standing still and just always thinking about taking steps. So I'd say take the small steps.
Okay.
Secondly, I think Jingjin, who was on your podcast or videocast, I should say, a few weeks ago from Zazazu, one of the leading sexual wellness and health brands here in Asia. I think she said the same thing, or at least we've talked about it before offline, is really surrounding yourself with good people who inspire you, people who you learn from, and people who you can give back to. So people who really energize you. Finally, because I work in FemTech, it would behoove me to say, take care of your health. So the third lesson I would say is your health is your wealth. If you don't have good health, it's very hard to take care of your business, your family, your friends, and every other part of your life. So please, everyone, take care of your health as the most important thing.
Fantastic, fantastic. On that note, Lindsay, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for your amazing 3 pieces of advice or 3 lessons. Be action-oriented, take small steps and pivot if required. Surround yourself with good people, and finally, take good care of your health. Thank you for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about the FemTech Association and the wonderful work that you're doing in 10 different countries. Thank you for talking to me about women's health in Asia and some of the challenges. And I'm sure, as you develop FAA, you'll suddenly see what a difference you're making in the lives of women. And it's often been said, when you educate a woman, you educated a family. When you look after a woman's health, you look after the woman's family. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a wonderful day, and thank you to all your listeners.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.